Hello. What is up, Facebook? How are you, friends? Happy Tuesday. So I know my post earlier said I was going to go live in my VIP group. I thought about it, and that was the original plan. And then I thought, why limit? Why limit who receives this information? So I decided to go on my regular page. Oh, I see somebody's watching. I don't know who you are. Say hi. Throw up some hearts if you're interested. Hi, Tina. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Crystal. I know I have a hot topic, right? Everybody's going to hop on. Everybody wants to know about this topic. Hey, Kelsey. Throw me some hearts. Let's get some comments or some notifications popping up here so that more people can join us. I want to know, hi, Jenny. I want to know what questions you all have, first of all. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to comment them below. I can see your comments running here. Or, excuse me, or send me a message, okay? So, excuse me, I have some allergy issues. I must have an allergy with ragweed or something. Hey, Kira. Because I am struggling with the runny nose and stuffy nose. What's up, sister? Okay, so this is an important topic, guys. Talking to our kids about sex. So first of all, I will not take credit for all of this information that I'm sharing. This information came from my conference. What's up, Kelly? This information came from my conference in a class I took with a lady named Lydia Bowers. She was full of information. You could look her up on Facebook or follow her. She shares information and is a wealth of knowledge. So that's really why I hopped on tonight, just to share some information. This is a topic I'm obviously pretty passionate about. I think in general, we're doing a disservice to our youth. I think we're getting better. I think it's getting better. We're making progress, but there is still a ton of progress to be made about how we are speaking to our youth about sex. Kira, I agree with you 100%. The idea we have of sex ed in a lot of high schools, and there's been some research done. She shared with us, I think I wrote some down, but I'm having a hard time finding that specific information. But the majority of our older people, so like by the time they get to, let's say 20 or 18, I think the majority of our younger people are being taught, oh, here it is. They're being taught in sex ed about birth control, about abstinence, and about STIs. And that's pretty much it. Very few sex ed programs in high schools are including consent. Very few are including any information about pleasure and enjoyment when it comes to sex. Very few are including anything about diversity. So, gender preferences, partner preferences, things like that. And so there's a lot of gaps. There are huge gaps to fill in, depending on what program your children are in schools. And sometimes you can't even depend on what the program says it's teaching, because it will depend on the teacher. I know I have heard of some programs where the teachers themselves aren't even comfortable using anatomically correct terms. And so in class, they may not talk about everything they're supposed to, just because they're not comfortable speaking about it, because a lot of our sex ed teachers are simply health teachers and or PE teachers, and they're kind of like doubling up on roles. And so it doesn't even always matter what they're supposed to be covering. They have to be comfortable presenting this information. And so it's tricky. It's tricky. There's a lot of gaps. A lot of kids aren't learning what we might think they're learning in school. And a lot of parents, a lot of adults find it difficult to talk about, don't know how to talk about it. So that's what I want to share some information about tonight. Okay. So first of all, this Lydia Bowers, she says always to remember work when it comes to the parenting side, because a lot of us adults and parents, we view, once we become an adult and a parent, we kind of have a blurred lens on what sex and sex ed and sexual health is. And so when it comes to addressing our kids' sexuality, we use that blurred lens of the parent and the protective and the uncomfortable, and so we get a different lens, and so it's harder to work through that. But Lydia Bowers always says that you should use the work, and that work, WORK. And she says to think about why it is that you're uncomfortable. Hi, Carmen. She says to think about why it is you're uncomfortable, to opt for teachable moments. So it should be a never-ending conversation. This isn't something like you sit down and you talk about once and then that's it. Talking with our kids about sex should be a never-ending conversation. Hello, ladies. As you're hopping on, if you have questions, please put them in the comments or send me a message. You can always go back and view this later as well, but we are talking about a hot topic tonight. Then Lydia says to review your resources, right? And which I'm going to give you some tonight. And then K is to know how to answer questions. And one of my favorite things that Lydia taught us at conference was how to answer questions. So I know that comes up a lot, especially if you have a tween or a teenager, as they start to ask you questions about sex. Hi, Morgan. What's up, Tracy? As they start to ask you questions, it can be hard to know how to answer them. So I loved what she said about this. She said, the first thing you should say whenever your kid asks a question about sex or anything sex related, let's say they ask you what something is or what something means. You should always say, tell me what you think first. That should be your first response, is tell me what you think. Because kids are receiving information from all kinds of other sources. Okay. If they have access to internet, they are searching things on their own. They have access from their friends, right? Their friends are searching things on their own, even if your child isn't. And they're sharing information with their friends. Older siblings could be sharing information. The TV, movies, overhearing conversations, and children interpret those conversations in different ways. So you never know what is making your child. Okay, Tracy, do come back and watch later. You never know what is prompting that question within your child. And it's super important. I think you and me as a parent too, I think we're better able to address their question if we know what they're thinking. So always start with, tell me what you think. Sometimes what you think is maybe sex related, when they ask a question, what they think is totally not sex related. And then you can take dodge that one and answer it with whatever the answer is. There are a lot of things that have more than one meaning, right? Or a lot of slang or whatever, but kids are getting their information from a plethora of resources, and we need to keep that in mind when we're answering their questions and try to figure out what is making them ask that question. It'll help you answer better, and it will help you address the whole situation, not just the question, but where they heard that from and how they heard that and things like that. The other thing she said was to keep it simple. It doesn't always have to be complicated, and you don't always have to like verbal puke all this information at them. Hey, Jess, tell them, give them enough to answer their question, and then see if that's enough. Like, maybe it will be. Always ask, once you answer their question, always ask, did that answer your question, right? So they ask you a question, you ask them, you tell me what you think, and then you keep it simple in answering what their question was, and then ask them, make sure that you have some questions written down. Good, Tracy, I'll take them. You can send them to me. Make sure that once you've answered them, that you say, does that answer your question? Using correct terminology. Kira, I'm going to hop on that in a second. Stay tuned. So does that answer your question really helps them to put together, okay, what was I thinking? What did mom or dad answer? Or whatever adult I asked, how did they answer that? And does that answer my question? It kind of helps them put some closure to it. And it helps you know that, yes, you did answer their question, and maybe they're not going to go searching or asking others. And then here's what you say sometimes, because sometimes this is the case, and it's okay. I am not sure, but here's where we can get some more information. Let's do this, or let's do that, or let's go talk to this person, or look into this book. And sometimes that's okay. We don't have to have all the answers, guys. Parents don't have to know everything. And unfortunately, and maybe it's not unfortunate, but this is something that is really becoming more and more important, but long ago maybe wasn't that important. And so what my parents were taught is completely different than what I am needing to teach my child, because the world has changed. And maybe not necessarily so much as the world changed, but what is available and what is out there. And honestly, the world has changed, and so we have to change too. We don't know all the answers. Parents don't have all the answers. What their kids are dealing with is different than what they dealt with. So it's okay to say that you don't know the answer, and then to tell them that we're going to figure it out, right? So a couple of resources. One resource, I have a couple of books. One is called Sex is a Funny Word. I finally just got this ordered today. It's been on my list of things to do since I came back from conference. But this is a book that she had with her, and I really liked it. It includes all different ideas, which I think is important these days. It really talks about it in a good way. I think it's meant for kids from, I want to say like 7 to 10, it said. So I want to be prepared for when Liam starts to ask questions. And so I ordered that book myself. Another one is called What Makes a Baby. This one is kind of like it's like a comic, kind of cute, cartoony book, but it really just addresses the idea that it's like an egg and a sperm, and they dance, and the DNA, and it kind of keeps it a little bit more scientific and less so about like falling in love. And it includes, again, all situations of making a baby, whether you were adopted or whether you were and artificially inseminated, or different things like that. It includes all of that stuff. I have a couple of podcasts. So podcast one is called Sex Positive Families, and the other one she recommended was called 6 Minute Sex Ed. So if you're a podcast listener, check those out. Sorry. And then as an adult, or maybe an older teen that you think is ready, there's a book called For Goodness Sex, and there's one called Come As You Are. That one's definitely more for adults. All books she included, though, and I trust this woman. I really enjoyed her class. I got a lot out of it. So anything she recommends, even if I haven't quite gotten into it myself, I think would be worthwhile. Okay, so there are some resources for you. So I gave you the basics: asking questions, answering questions, being prepared. One more super important thought before I address a couple of questions is, you have to know that not talking about sex with your kids also says something. it is just as much of a message as talking about it with your kids. So if you choose not to talk to them about it, know that they will get their information from other sources, because kids are curious. And if you're not the one talking with them about it, then they will find somebody else to talk to about it, or find other sources for their information. And so it's super important to talk about it regardless. I know it can be awkward and uncomfortable, but it's so important. I think and this is where my opinion comes in. Okay, so you can disagree with this or not, but I think not talking about it leads to even more harm, because it leaves our children to think, one, that it's shameful, that their bodies are shameful, that the sexual urges they have as they get older are shameful, that talking about it with their significant others and partners is wrong or shameful. And when it comes down to it, a good intimate relationship, couples that have good intimate relationships are communicating about it. And people that are competent and successful in life, in general, are competent in their bodies and comfortable in their bodies. And that also plays a part in this sexual education. If nobody had ever talked to me about sex, I wouldn't be comfortable in my body. I wouldn't know how my body works. If you don't want to talk to me about my body when I have questions about my body, then I start to feel confused and worried and uncomfortable about my body. And I think it's super important to give the message to our children and to our youth to be comfortable and confident in their bodies. So I think we need to be talking about this. I also think that the more confident and comfortable our youth is with their bodies, in a truthful and honest state, I think the less likely they are to be to have trouble in relationships later, and to have more appropriate and more healthy relationships. So yeah, I think talking about it is very important. Okay, so let's address, I think I had a question. If anybody else has questions, please pop them in the comments or send them my way in a private message, whatever makes you most comfortable. Excuse me. I did have the question about proper terminology to use. I think when you work in a childcare setting, I think that gets a little tricky, just because you're not the parent. As a parent, I think it's most important to use correct terminology. My number one reason would be, as a teacher, if I had a student come up and tell me that their uncle took their cookie or touched their cookie last night, I wouldn't think too much about it. But if they've been taught to call their private parts a cookie, and they're trying to disclose to me an abusive situation, and I don't think anything of it because they're talking about a cookie instead of a vagina or a penis or a vulva or a labia or a breast, okay? Correct terminology is super important. In a school setting, as a teacher in a school setting, do I use those terms necessarily? No, I don't often get the opportunity to use those terms. If a child were to ask me about a question, I would get with the parent on a question that a child is asking me, because I don't want to overstep those boundaries, and I'm not a sex ed teacher in 3rd grade, right? Especially and younger than that. If it would depend on the situation. And I think you would have to, if it became like a class-wide situation and it was kind of coming up, then I would probably sit down with some parents and say, we have a lot of questions coming up. And not necessarily be concerned, but I want to make sure that I am addressing this in a way that you're comfortable with, or sharing them. I mean, I would use correct terms if they're asking, or if they're using them. I would certainly not teach incorrect terms. And if it's a constant, like maybe just talking with the parent, hey, this came up and we're using this term or whatever. I know, especially with the littles, I worried the day that my son realized that girls don't have penises, because he said something to his cousins about their penis. And it was like, they're girls. They said, no, I don't have a penis. And then he was kind of like, then what do you do? Like, what do you have? And so he was kind of concerned. And so I had to teach him penis and vagina. And then I thought, oh gosh, what if he goes to school using the word vagina? And is he going to end up teaching but in the long term and in the grand scheme of things, I want my kids knowing correct terminology, whether it's my students or my children. And I think that's important. So I think you have to do with what you believe in. But as a teacher, if you're addressing, like if they're asking you what those things are called or whatever, that would, I would use correct terms. I would. And if it was coming up a lot, and you might have a situation where you would want to talk to the parents, but using correct terminology is number one important for me. It will be important for all children. If they ever encounter an abusive situation, they need to be able to disclose properly, or it won't get disclosed. So that's super important. Let me do a quick review. I've been on here. Does anybody else have any other questions? Bree says, had to say vagina and penis. Yeah. So are you guys told to say that? Because I've never worked in preschool and kindergarten. It's only been in school, like elementary age. So I've never necessarily had to address that per se. But I know Bree works in a preschool situation. It was weird at first, but now it's normal. Yeah. And, I guess as a teacher, you'll always, there's always the chance that a parent will come back and say, did you teach my kid the word penis? And then, again, it goes back to what you believe in. Yes, I did. And this is why. And usually when you present it that way, I think most parents they see it. They see it that way. They understand. I think most are going to be forgiving. They'll calm down a bit, I think. Looking at some more at my notes. So I'm super excited about some resources I have coming my way. Here's another big thing. Be careful searching or Googling, I should say, be careful Googling with your children about sexual health topics, because a lot of what is still popping up is pornographic. And it's already unfortunate how many of our youth are getting what they think is information about sexual relationships from pornography. Because pornography is not, it's not realistic. I'm not saying bad or good either way. It's not realistic in a lot of cases. And so when our youth, and that includes adults as well, when our youth and adults are using pornography as their source of information, even if it's just for viewing pleasure, the ideas that get built up are very unrealistic, and then they don't understand how actual sex works either, or intercourse works either. So that can be pretty alarming and damaging. And here's another thought. When our children or young adults are expecting one thing, based on information or outside sources or pornography or whatever, then their reaction to what happens in their sexual relationship is based off of what they're expecting. So if you aren't communicating with your children or teens or a young adults about realistic sexual relationships, then they don't have anything else to go on other than what they see in media, and that's not good either. So so their reaction then depends on what their expectations are, and then their partner's reaction is also based on what their reaction was. It feeds off of it. Let's just put out a situation where one partner expects one thing and then gets another and has a negative reaction about it. And then the other partner is now questioning and has lower confidence and thinks something is wrong with them based on their partner's reaction, when really their partner's expectation was way high, like unrealistic. So a lot comes back to communicating. And if we are communicating about it at a younger age, then they are comfortable communicating about it as they get older. If they're comfortable communicating about it, they're more confident in being able to say no based on what they don't want, and they're more comfortable communicating about it with their partners. So communication is key. I think it's important, and I will stand on a soapbox and talk about how important it is until I die if I have to. But this is obviously a topic I'm pretty passionate about. So yes, I will post the books, the titles of the books, and the podcast information in the comments below for you. That's a great idea. Thank you. I will do that, Allison. All right. So I think, let me know if you have anything else. Again, her name is Lydia Bowers. She taught this class and it was amazing. I wrote like crazy and still felt like I missed things. So I'm definitely looking forward to more resources coming my way. And I feel like this is pretty well known. I just saw one more note that I wanted to add. Puberty. Get it ahead of time. Talk with them about it ahead of time. There are children with high anxiety or just they're worrying kids or what have you. And when things start to happen in their bodies, if they're not comfortable talking about it, they're not going to ask you, and they're just going to worry and fret, and it's going to cause them a lot of inner turmoil. Or if they don't know what's happening, they're going to totally freak out about things like waking up in wet spots or getting their period, or those are like the two major, like, what is happening that kids can do if they don't know. So talk with them ahead of time. And you should also know that no matter what age it was when you started to hit puberty and experience those things, they're getting younger and younger. It's happening younger and younger. I don't know. I kind of suspect it's because of the hormones that are going into a lot of our products these days, meat and things, and milk. And some kids, there are kids that drink a ton of milk, or eat a lot of meat, and they might be getting more of that than usual. So, puberty is definitely happening younger and younger. And so, I think it's important to address it, like, even before you think you might need to. So, okay, I think I've said enough. I've shared enough. I will put book titles and podcast, subscription information in the comments. And as always, if you have questions, please ask me. If I don't know the answer, I will find it for you. And I will never tell you exactly what to say to your children or how to answer a specific question when it comes down to what you believe in, as far as religion and things like that. I will tell you, you need to be talking about it. You need to be communicating, and it needs to be an open conversation and a never-ending conversation, so that it is a constant communication. Super important. They'll thank you when they're older. Okay. Have a wonderful evening. Happy Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday, halfway through the week. You can do it. Have a great evening. Bye.